Hello everyone, welcome to today's video, which I'm so excited about. It is the ultimate guide to the Grishaverse, and I am so excited to talk about the Grishaverse because it's my favourite book series of all time. Absolutely love it. Lee is amazing and all these books are so great and so worth the read, so I hope that this video inspires you to read the books if you haven't already. And today I'm going to be talking about the magic system, the reading order, and the differences between the Netflix show and all the books as a whole. So first, going into the magic system. So in this magic system, in this world, we have Grisha, which are the people that have magical powers. Not everyone has magical powers, but they can be from all over the world in different countries, but they mainly all live in Ravka, in the little palace, which is next to the big palace. That's not what it's called, but they're near the royals, but they're their own little society basically, and they train and they fight ready for armies because Ravka is kind of in war with Fjerda and Shuhan, which are their bordering countries. I will show you a map so you can understand what I'm talking about. But here's my favourite map of all the series. They all kind of have different maps. My favourite one is in the King of Scars and Rule of Wolves duology, and it just looks, it's so detailed and it's so great. I love it so much. It's got some great illustrations on there, but you can see Ravka, which is basically our main country, in the middle, and then Fjerda to the north, which is really icy and cold, and then Shuhan, and then down below here we have Kerch, which is like an island nation, and then Novia Zem to the side, and Wandering Isles to the north. But yes, so those are the countries, and now going into the actual Grisha orders, because there are different levels of Grisha and they control different things. So we have the Corporal Kai. I don't really know how to pronounce this. Like, I've tried to keep my ear out in the show trying to listen for pronunciation, but I don't know if they've said it or if I've just forgotten. But Corporal Kai, perhaps, is how you say it, and they're basically the order of the living and dead, and in that section we have Heartrenders who can control hearts basically. It says it in the name, but they can kill people with like the tiny little, you know, they do little hand movements, that's how they all do it. And they can control people, kill them, all sorts of things. And then next we have healers, which is pretty self-explanatory once again. They heal people. But we also have tailors, which can like make you look like different people, but usually tailors and healers are like kinda similar. They can usually do both. But the next Grisha order that we have is Ethereal Kai. Ethereal Key. I don't really know how to pronounce it, okay? But they're the order of the summoners, and in that we have Squallers who can control wind. And they're like, whew. And then we also have Inferni, which do fire, and Tide Makers, which do water. And then we also have the very rare Shadow Summoners and Sun Summoners, which is basically what Shadow and Bone follows. And then the last order of the Grisha is the Material Kai, Material Key, I don't know, but they're the order of the Fabricators, and we have Duras who work with materials such as like wood, metal, all sorts of things really, and Alchemy, which can do like stuff with bombs and chemicals and all sorts of stuff like that. So those are the Grisha and their orders, and now going into the Kefters, which are like the little coats that all the Grisha wear, and they're all coloured, and you may have noticed this in the show if you've watched it. So we have the Corporal Kai in red kefters with different colour embroidery depending which Corporal Kai you are. So Heartrenders have black embroidery, healers have grey embroidery, and tailors have blue embroidery. All the summoners wear blue kefters, Squallers with silver embroidery, Inferni with red, and Tide Makers with a light bluish green. And then the Sun Summoner, of course, has gold embroidery on a blue kefter. And then the Darkling, the Shadow Summoner, just wears all black. Very fitting, and yeah, he's the only one that really wears black. And then the last order, the Fabricators, wear purple, and the Duras have grey embroidery, and the Alchemy have red embroidery. So those are all the kefters. So now, when you see a Grisha wearing a kefter, you will know what order they are in based on their colour and embroidery. But that is basically all the magic system. Those are the Grisha orders. there were all your countries. Now you basically have some knowledge on the world as a whole, and now we'll go into the reading order and all the books in the Grishaverse. So first, I'll just show you all the books. I'll stack them up. So these are the main 7 books in the Grishaverse. There are also 3 extra books which aren't necessary to the plot points of all the series, but are very interesting to read as well. But I'll go through the reading order, which is basically publication order. This one's really simple. You don't want to read it out of order, even though you can. I will get into that a bit later, but you first want to start off with Shadow and Bone, which has Shadow and Bone, Siege and Storm, and Ruin and Rising. And this is the first series in the Grishaverse overall, so it's a great base to build up your knowledge, because moving into the other series it can be quite confusing if you don't have some background knowledge. And I would know this because I was one of the people that read Six of Crows before reading Shadow and Bone, and I did not know what was going on at all, and it made me, this is crazy for me to say because you should all know how much I love this book, but I didn't absolutely love it. I liked it, but I didn't love it when I first read it. I was like, oh, I'm confused. But when season 1 of Shadow and Bone was coming out, I was like, I have to read the trilogy. I have to know what's going on before I watch the show. So I read the trilogy, and then I came back to Six of Crows and read Crooked Kingdom after that, and I fell in love, and rightfully so, because it's an amazing series and I would definitely recommend you read it after reading the trilogy. And then the third series in the Grishaverse is King of Scars and Rule of Wolves. These are great as well, absolutely love them, but you don't want to start that until you finish Crooked Kingdom. I'm saying this because there are spoilers. If you read this, there's characters that cross over from all of the 2 series, so they talk about stuff that happens in the other books. And even though you might go, oh, I'm not really interested in Six of Crows, which would be a stupid decision on your part because Six of Crows is amazing, and you think I'm going to go straight to King of Scars because I really liked Nikolai from the Shadow and Bone trilogy, which is fair, Nikolai's great, but there are characters that talk about stuff that happen in this book and in this book that if you ever wanted to go back you'll be spoiled, and I don't want that for you. But this is also absolutely great. Loved it. Definitely recommend. What annoys me though is that Rule of Wolves is bigger than all of my other books in the Grishaverse because I couldn't wait for it to come out in the smaller paperback size. I did wait for King of Scars because I was like, oh, I don't really want a tall one. Now I am a tall one. So that is your reading order. Now I'll give you a little bit more background on each of the series if you don't really know too much about it. So the trilogy is only told from Alina's perspective and it's first person, which I found like really easy to follow. And it's basically got the trope like teenage girl has to save the world. And that's basically what happens. And it's set in Ravka, as I was talking about before. This is basically where most of the books take place. And it's about Alina, who is a map maker for the army, and she has recently been discovered to have the powers of the Sun Summoner. And in this world they've been waiting for a Sun Summoner to show up for a long time to destroy the Shadow Fold, which is this big split in the country that is all shadows and filled with monsters. So they want to take it down so that Ravka can be united once again. So that is basically what the trilogy follows. There's obviously a lot more that happens. There's betrayals, plot twists, and I think you would really enjoy it. And then we've got Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom, which follows 6 characters. We've got a found family trope and they're going on a heist. Love a good heist. They're criminals. Come on guys, we love that. I know we don't like criminals in real life, but in a book, sure, give me all the criminals. You do actually see these characters in the Shadow and Bone TV show, but it hasn't yet followed the storyline of the duology, so you still don't know what happens in that series if you've only just watched the shows. Definitely read the books. Definitely read them. You will love them. I'm sure of it. And then lastly is the King of Scars and Rule of Wolves duology, which follows Nikolai and lots of other characters in the series, which I don't really want to say too much about for fear of spoiling. So there are characters from this trilogy and this duology that do end up showing up in here. And then in these books, we're actually going to different countries as well. So even though I said Ravka is like the main area where stuff happens, they are in Ravka for a lot of this, but they're also in Fyodor and Shuhan, which is really exciting because we didn't get to see anything of Shuhan in the previous books. We had characters from there, but we'd never stepped foot in the country until now, which is so cool, even though in the show they went to Shuhan in the second season, which shouldn't have happened, but I will talk about that later. Now going on to the extra books in the Grishaverse, we have The Lives of Saints, which is, as it sounds, like the lives of the saints that are mentioned throughout the series. So there's quite a few different saints, probably, I don't know if there's like 20, I don't know, there's a whole lot, a whole lot. But this is basically like a collection of short stories, and each different saint has their own short story of how they became a saint, how they died. It's all in there, and it sounds very interesting. I have never read it, I really want to read it, and actually the cover of this book is actually the same cover that is shown throughout the show. So it's like, if you get the book, it's kind of like a prop piece from the show. I do really want to read this, and I'm sure it will be great just getting more information about the Grishaverse. And then there is another book, which is an extra once again, which is called The Language of Thorns, and this is basically like folklore and little stories. I kind of think of it as like things that the children of this world would have heard growing up, like little fairy tales basically. Again, never read it, really want to, it looks great. I'm pretty sure it's illustrated as well, so that is a bonus. And then lastly, right now there is the short story Demon in the Wood, which has recently been turned into a graphic novel, which sounds so cool. It is a prequel story to the Shadow and Bone trilogy, but I would recommend reading it after. I had a copy of The Demon in the Wood in the back of my Ruin and Rising book, so I have actually read the short story, but not in graphic novel form, but the graphic novel does look really good. I really liked the illustrations and colouring that they use. I flipped through it at the bookshop, but I haven't actually read it, and it looks amazing, so I would recommend. So those are all the books in the Grishaverse. There's your reading order, there's your magic system, and now I'm going to discuss the differences that I've found between the TV show and the books. There is quite a few, but if you've never read the books, you probably wouldn't know. So the big obvious one that I would mention is that the characters of Six of Crows are actually in the first and second season of Shadow and Bone without having their own storyline in it. So I thought at first that it would be strange because, like, why would that happen if they don't even know the characters and they don't have anything to do with their storyline, because we don't really hear much about it in Six of Crows, even though there are some crossovers, like Inej mentions like Alina quite a bit. But in the Shadow and Bone TV show, which does follow these books, it's basically the first and second season is the whole trilogy. Like, it wraps up their story in the second season. We actually have our crows, 5 of them only, meeting the characters from these books, which is strange. They're involved in that storyline. It was interesting to see them though. Like, obviously I love my crows, so I want some more content with the crows, but I just thought it was weird how they were put in there. Not weird in a bad way, just strange as like, how are they going to do it? It worked out well, so I was quite happy with that. But in the show we do see Nina and Matthias together on their shipwreck, which we do hear about as like flashbacks in Six of Crows, and that was really cool to see how that actually played out and what happened between them. But another thing that happened, that I was talking to some of my friends who hadn't read the books, and I was saying how that Milo the goat never existed. And when the first season came out, lots of people were talking about Milo, and he doesn't exist in the books because these characters weren't involved in this, so there was no need for a goat. But in the show we got a goat, which was fine. I didn't mind the goat. I have seen like lots on the interviews of the cast, because of course I watch cast interviews, that people were saying like, cook Milo. I'd never seen any of those hashtags or anything before I'd watched those interviews, so I was shocked. I would never do that to that poor little goat. He was such a cutie. Also, another one that I found really confusing is the Darkling. So in the books we just know him as the Darkling or Alexander, and in the show he's called General Kirigan. However, I'm pretty sure, I don't remember if it was Siege and Storm or Ruin and Rising, but there was a character either named Kerrigan or Kerrigan. I don't really remember if there was like a spelling difference, but there was a character with nearly the exact same name, and obviously they didn't show up in the show, but I was like, what is happening here? What is happening? So yeah, I was just a little confused at the beginning, but obviously like now it's fine because I know what was happening. But in the first season, first episode, I was like, what? They changed his name? That was basically my little discussion of the first season. I'm going into the second season now. So if you don't want to get spoiled for the second season, if you haven't watched it, or if you haven't read the books, stop now, probably, because you might get spoiled for the content that's in the books and in the shows. But one that I was really not disappointed about, because I do know the reason, but Wylan and Wesper, right? They were so rushed in the second season of the show, which it baffled me. It really did. If I remember correctly, they don't even kiss until Crooked Kingdom, which is the second book, but they knew each other and they were like together in the show, which is fine because I do know this was kind of explained that the producers were worried that they weren't going to get a third season or the Six of Crows spin-off, which could be happening. So they kind of like just put in plot points that they knew the fans would want to see so that we wouldn't be disappointed. But now if we get a Six of Crows spin-off, I'm just like wondering what would happen to their little storyline. So what will happen with the Six of Crows spin-off, it is if the second season of Shadow and Bone goes well, they might do a Six of Crows spin-off. I've heard they've already written a script for a first season of that, and they perfectly set it up at the end of the Shadow and Bone show for the Six of Crows plotline. I can't wait for that if that happens, obviously. Like, big fan. I really need that show. Like right now. Also, as I was mentioning before, that they went to Shu Han in the show, which they don't even get to until the third series of the Grishaverse, which was cool to see, but I was just shocked that they went there because we didn't even get that at all in this. But going again more into the show, ending like with the second season, there were some big differences as well. So in the end of the trilogy, Alina loses her powers after taking down the fold and her hair turns white, which didn't happen. And she actually seemed to have gotten stronger because at like the last 20 seconds of the show, she used the Darkling's powers to kill someone. So I was shocked and surprised. I don't know what's going to happen if there's going to be another season of the Shadow and Bone show. If we're going to get like an evil Alina, I'm not too sure what's going to happen because she was meant to lose her powers, which was something that I wasn't like absolutely loving in the books because that happens so often. Like, magical people lose their powers after saving the world? No! Why can't they still have their powers? Which I guess now she does. But is she evil now? I don't know. And also, Mal left Alina to go and sail around as a privateer, which would definitely not happen in the books because they were in love. So I'm interested to see if there is another season, what would happen between them, if he's still just sailing around. Same with Inej, she left like the Crows group to go hunt slavers, which does happen at the end of Crooked Kingdom. But obviously if we get our Six of Crows spin-off show, she would have to come back because what, it's going to be called Five of Crows? Also, another plot point that I was so upset about, David. If you haven't watched the show, like seriously now, turn off this video. David died. And again, if you haven't read the books, if you haven't read Rule of Wolves, turn it off now. He does die in the end of Rule of Wolves. But it like made sense there, although it was really sad in the book and I did cry. I was like, why is it happening so early in the show? Because him and Jenya were barely together. Like, we knew Jenya liked him, but it wasn't to the extent of how she would be so distraught that he is dead. And in the books, he died on their wedding day and his last words were the same last words that he had in the show, but in the book it was his wedding vows, and then in the show he was just saying goodbye to her, and then he died. But like, why? Why kill him off so early? Poor Jenya, she has gone through too much. So those are basically the main differences that I've jotted down between the books and the show. I didn't get everything down because I do remember like quite often being like, hey, that did not happen in the books when I was watching the show. So if you have more that you would like to talk about and discuss with me, I would also love to know in the comments. But that is it for this video. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you are now inspired to read the Grishaverse. I really hope you do, because it's my favourite series ever, and it definitely deserves all the hype and all the love that it gets. I hope you read it, hope you enjoy it, and now you know the reading order, magic system, and the show. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and I will see you next week with a new video. Goodbye!